Stephen Charnock might not be the most widely recognized of the Puritans compared to names like Thomas Watson, John Owen, Richard Baxter, or Thomas Brooks. Even so, his classic work, Discourses upon the Existence and Attributes of God, has had a long-lasting impact on generations of believers. Written to provide instruction and encouragement for pastors, theologians, and the everyday believer, The Existence and Attributes of God was published after Charnock's death in 1680 by Richard Adams and Edward Veal, who had been members of his congregation. But who was Stephen Charnock? Well, Charnock was a 17th century Puritan theologian and Presbyterian pastor. Born in London in 1628, Charnock would eventually study at Emmanuel College in Cambridge. It was here that Charnock was educated, converted, and impacted by Puritan theology. For several years, he lived in Ireland with the family of Henry Cromwell, who was Ireland's chief governor and fourth son of Oliver Cromwell. He served as Cromwell's chaplain, and the role doesn't seem to have been merely ceremonial. Throughout his time in Dublin, he devotedly and passionately conducted ministry. Charnock preached every Sunday to a diverse congregation that included various religious denominations and social classes. His talent and integrity drew followers from other churches, and his ties with the governor's family attracted high-ranking individuals. His sermons were greatly admired and appreciated. In fact, he received an honorary Bachelor in Divinity degree from Trinity College in Dublin during his time living in the city. Well, in 1660, Charles II reclaimed the throne in England. Oliver Cromwell was bizarrely executed posthumously, and Henry Cromwell lost his spot as governor of Ireland. Well, as a result, Charnock returned to England. However, due to the Act of Uniformity, which required conformity with the practices of the Church of England, Charnock was expelled from the church along with many other faithful Puritan ministers. Despite not being able to have any official pastoral role, Charnock practiced his ministry privately for 15 years. When the government restrictions eased in 1675, Charnock accepted an invitation to serve as co-pastor with Reverend Thomas Watson at a congregation in Crosby Square. Watson was a notable Presbyterian minister who had been expelled from St. Stephen's, Walbrook, after the Act of Uniformity and had formed a church in the same location. Well, under their ministry, the congregation thrived, and Charnock left a lasting impact through his pastoral ministry and his skillful preaching, which drew large crowds. Charnock passed away on July 27, 1680 at age 53. The details of his death, as with much of his life, are pretty limited. It's recorded that at the time he died, he had been delivering a series of discourses or lectures on the existence and attributes of God to his congregation at Crosby Hall. He died in the home of Richard Timms in London, which suggests that his death was sudden. His body was brought to the church at Crosby Square, where he had so often preached and prayed and taught. And from there, accompanied by a large procession of mourners, it was transported to St. Michael's Church in Cornhill, where it was laid to rest near the bell tower. His old friend and former classmate at Cambridge, Mr. John Johnson, delivered the funeral sermon. In this funeral sermon, Johnson said of Charnock that he was always serving the only true and living God, as becomes such a God. All the work wherein he employed and exercised himself with diligence, skill, and constancy was love to God and souls. His life he examined and squared until it was exact according to the rule of God's Word. Well, I hope you found that brief look at the life and ministry of Stephen Charnock helpful. If you'd like to pick up a copy of The Existence and Attributes of God, you can use the links below. When you use these affiliate links, it's one of the best ways that you can support reasonabletheology.org, and I encourage you to add this helpful 2-volume set to your library.